When I boarded that plane for my final tour, I thought I still had a home to come back to. A wife. A life. But the message waiting on my phone shattered all of that. Just 4 words: don't come home. No explanation. No goodbye. But here's the thing. While she was planning my exit, I was already rewriting the ending. And trust me, it wasn't the one she expected. Before we delve into the story, tell us, have you been betrayed before? Tell us your experience in the comment section. Kindly leave a like, share, and subscribe to our channel to support us. Now let's go. I boarded that transport jet with my boots scuffed, my shoulders heavy, and a knot buried deep in my stomach that had nothing to do with the mission ahead. You don't need to be psychic to feel when your home is crumbling. There's a coldness that lingers even in texts that say, love you. A delay in replies that used to come instantly. A silence after phone calls where once there was laughter. I knew something was wrong long before my final tour began, but I told myself it was stress, distance, maybe even fatigue. I convinced myself that once I came back, we'd fix it. That she'd still be waiting at the terminal like she always promised. I was wrong. Our last conversation before I left was brief. She didn't cry. Didn't say she'd miss me. Just a quick, be safe. No, I love you. No prayer. No kiss through the screen. That was the first red flag I ignored, and maybe that's on me. But I had a job to do, and distractions in my line of work could get you killed, or worse, get your unit killed. So I tucked my feelings away like I did with everything else personal, and I let the rhythm of the mission carry me through the months. I kept my head down during deployment, did my work, led my squad, wrote my reports, and every night, I'd stare up at the stars, trying to remember the sound of her voice when it was filled with warmth instead of tension. Some of the younger guys talked about the homes they were building, the kids they couldn't wait to see, the proposals they'd planned. I didn't talk much about her, because deep down, I knew I didn't belong in those conversations anymore. I wasn't sure I had a home to go back to. Still, I clung to the hope like a man holding his breath underwater. Maybe everything was still okay. Maybe I was just overthinking. Maybe she'd show up with flowers and a laugh, say she'd just been distant because of stress. We'd have dinner, reconnect, and patch the cracks before they became craters. I planned it all out in my head, until the day before our return flight. We were lined up on the tarmac, gear packed and manifest ready. The flight officer handed us our phones as we boarded. It had been weeks since I checked mine. As I powered it on, the screen blinked to life, and dozens of notifications flooded in. Emails, bank alerts, random texts. And then I saw hers. One message. 4 words. Sent less than 24 hours ago. Don't come home. No explanation. No emotion. Not even a punctuation mark. Just cold, brutal finality. My fingers hovered over the screen, not knowing what to type. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe a glitch. Maybe she meant something else. But no follow-up came. No calls. No corrections. Just silence. The kind of silence that confirms everything you feared was true. I sat there in my seat, surrounded by men laughing about burgers and road trips, and I felt hollow. Like the life I'd been holding on to wasn't mine anymore. Like I was a ghost who just hadn't accepted he'd died. But what she didn't know, what no one knew, was that I'd already seen this coming. And I'd already started preparing long before her message arrived. 3 months before my deployment, I noticed things. Receipts from restaurants I never visited. Late-night drives she couldn't explain. And the way she'd turn her phone screen away when I walked into the room. I didn't accuse her, not immediately. I just observed. Collected. I took screenshots. I asked a friend who worked in finance to help me restructure some assets quietly. I consulted a lawyer, had some documents prepared, and made sure that every major property was redeeded under a trust with only my name on it. I told myself it was just in case something happened to me during deployment, but truthfully, I was already preparing for this moment. I leaned back against the seat, gripping my phone as the engines fired up. I didn't reply. I didn't call. I didn't need to. Because whatever game she thought she was playing, whatever control she thought she had, it ended the moment I walked onto that jet months ago with a plan. A plan she never saw coming. As the plane lifted off the ground, I didn't look back. Not at the base, not at the sky, and certainly not at the past I'd been trying to preserve. I stared forward, into the future I was about to reclaim piece by piece. Because if she didn't want me to come home, I'd do her one better. I'd erase any home she thought she had. The plane touched down just after midnight. The wheels screamed against the tarmac like they knew I wasn't coming back to the life I left behind. Around me, the other soldiers burst into cheers, calls to girlfriends, FaceTime with kids, promises to meet at baggage claim. But I just sat there, staring at the message again. Don't come home. There was still no follow-up, no regret, no clarification. I had been erased in 4 words, after years of sacrifice, loyalty, and pretending the cracks weren't growing deeper with every passing month. I didn't text her back. I didn't need to. I had already responded months ago, silently and thoroughly. Every piece of real estate we owned was now under my name through a silent trust fund set up with my lawyer. Every joint account had been emptied, legally, of course, and my share was tucked safely into an account she didn't know existed. The car she drove? Leased under my business, not hers. The business? Registered without her name, despite what she believed. I wasn't just walking into betrayal. I was walking into it prepared, armed, and calm. That made all the difference. I collected my gear and walked out into the cold night air. The pickup lot was quiet, and I stood there for a few minutes, watching as families embraced and friends wept and hugged. No one came for me. No one called. No one missed me. And that was fine. That was what I needed. The final confirmation that I didn't owe anyone an explanation, not even her. I had already made arrangements with a friend, one of the few I trusted back home, who picked me up without questions. He didn't ask where I wanted to go, and I didn't offer. He just drove. We ended up in a quiet part of town, in a condo I had secretly purchased 6 months before deployment. It was simple, unfurnished, but it was mine. And more importantly, it was off the grid. No trail, no shared records, no access. I took a long shower, letting the steam cover my skin while my mind replayed everything she had said and done over the last year. I thought of the late nights she claimed were work emergencies, the missed calls she blamed on bad service, the way she flinched when I touched her shoulder, as if my presence was a burden. I remembered the credit card charges in cities she said she never visited. I remembered the perfume I smelled on her once that wasn't hers. And I remembered the day I decided to stop asking questions and start preparing my exit. The first step had been emotional detachment. That was the hardest. You can't gather evidence and make calculated moves if you're still hoping the person you love will return to who they used to be. I had to accept the truth. She wasn't mine anymore. Maybe she never was. The second step was financial. I moved funds, created trusts, protected everything I'd worked for. The third was legal. I sat with my lawyer and rewrote the foundation of our life, on paper, while smiling in front of her at dinner and pretending nothing was wrong. She thought I was blind, but I was watching everything. After I settled into the condo, I opened my laptop and reviewed the documents I had prepared. The divorce was already drafted. The property transfers had all cleared. The security footage I'd had installed around the house, without her knowledge, showed enough to confirm what I already knew. There were men, more than one, and she thought I'd never see it because I was halfway across the world serving a country she no longer respected. I forwarded the footage and financial records to my lawyer that morning with a simple note: proceed when ready. That was all it took. I sat at the bare kitchen counter, sipping coffee as the sun crept through the blinds. A home she never knew existed. A life she'd never touch again. I thought about the irony. How she wanted me gone, erased, out of the picture. But now, she was the one who would disappear from everything we built together. And the best part? She couldn't even blame me. Every signature was hers. Every transfer, every account, every lease, legally sound and time-stamped long before she sent that pathetic text. By noon, her silence was broken, not by her, but by her lawyer. He called from a number I recognized instantly. I let it ring 4 times before answering, just to let the tension build. When I picked up, he sounded confused, then nervous. Mr. Granger? This is Gregory Marsden, counsel for Mrs. Granger. I know who you are. There was a pause. We need to discuss the sudden property changes. Mrs. Granger wasn't aware that she signed every document in front of witnesses, with your office copying her on all filings. If she wasn't aware, that's your failure as counsel. He stammered something about clarification, but I interrupted him. She told me not to come home, Mr. Marsden. I'm simply honoring her request. There's no home left to come back to. Not for either of us. There was silence on the line, thick, stunned, loaded. Then came the real reason for his call. She's asking if there's a way to discuss things privately, off record, to resolve this amicably. She had her chance, I said calmly. She made her decision when she chose them over me. And when she sent that message, she confirmed it. Then I hung up. No yelling, no revenge speech, just the sound of silence on his end, followed by a dead line. And I smiled for the first time in months. The human heart doesn't break all at once. It breaks in pieces, quietly, slowly, over months and sometimes years. And when it finally shatters, it doesn't sound like glass. It sounds like silence. That was what my marriage became long before she ever sent that text. Silence. It wasn't the fights that made me suspicious, it was the absence of them. It was the rehearsed smiles, the way she'd nod instead of speak, the way our bed felt like two separate islands instead of a shared place of rest. And I saw it all. Every clue. Every change. I just didn't want to believe what it meant. The first warning came 6 months before my final deployment, on a Thursday night. She came home late, said the traffic was bad, but I'd already seen the local alerts. No traffic anywhere near her route. Her hair was too perfect for someone who'd just been in meetings, and she smelled different, like cologne I didn't wear. When I hugged her, she tensed like I was a stranger. And that night, when I asked her how her day was, she said, "Fine," then walked into the bedroom and closed the door. No kiss, no dinner, nothing, just the sound of a lock turning softly behind her. I tried to push the doubts away, but they kept coming. One morning, I left for work and realized I'd forgotten my badge. I came back in through the front door and heard her whispering. She was on the phone. She didn't hear me. "No, he just left," she said, laughing. "We have time." I didn't say anything. I didn't confront her. I just backed out quietly and drove to base, staring at the steering wheel like it held answers. That night, I asked her who she was talking to. She said it was her cousin, the one who lived overseas. The lie was so clumsy, so desperate, that I didn't even bother questioning it. I just nodded and took note of the time. I wrote it down later. That was when I started my own private journal. Not one for emotions, but for details. Dates, times, receipts, missed calls, strange texts. I wasn't preparing to accuse her. I was preparing to survive her. I remembered another night, just weeks before I shipped out. She was unusually affectionate, like she was trying to make up for something. She cooked my favorite meal, wore that black dress I once told her she looked perfect in. She smiled more than she had in months. But her eyes never smiled. That's the thing with people who lie. You can train your mouth, but not your eyes. And hers stayed hollow no matter how bright her laugh sounded. That was the night I started the process with the lawyer. I told him I needed everything airtight. I explained what I suspected but admitted I had no direct proof yet. He said I was smart to act early. Most men wait until it's too late. I set up the trust, restructured our accounts, and rerouted my direct deposits into new business entities that couldn't be touched without my biometric approval. I paid off the mortgage quietly and had the deed redrawn, legally and cleanly. She never noticed. That was the part that stunned me the most. She never even asked where the money was going. She was so confident in her deception that she never thought I'd see her coming. One time, I pretended to be asleep on the couch while she FaceTimed someone in the hallway. I watched her reflection in the mirror. Her voice was soft, playful, giddy. "Yeah, he's here, but asleep," she whispered. "We'll talk later. Love you." I closed my eyes before she turned. I didn't breathe, didn't blink. I just memorized every syllable of that sentence. She didn't say "love you" to me anymore. She reserved that for someone else now. That night, I installed motion-activated security cams at the front door and garage entrance. She never noticed. After she sent that message, "Don't come home," all the memories hit me at once like a reel playing backward. The canceled date nights. The secretive texts. The way she always carried her phone into the bathroom and locked the door. The dry eyes whenever I said goodbye before a mission. I had ignored so many signs, holding on to the hope that love could be resurrected. But hope is dangerous when it keeps you chained to people who've already left you in their hearts. I remembered the final confirmation I got just 2 weeks before leaving for my last tour. A friend from base, he worked IT security, did a deep search on some files for me. I handed him screenshots of numbers she frequently texted. One of them was registered under a burner line, disposable. But the location data from the timestamps matched her exact GPS movements. Her work meetings had been hotel rooms. Her gym nights had been dinner dates. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just thanked him, printed everything, and gave it to my lawyer in a sealed envelope. Now, sitting alone in the condo with the sun creeping into the empty living room, I realized I hadn't really lost anything. The woman I thought I married hadn't existed for a long time, and the home I once knew was already gone before she told me not to come back. That message wasn't a betrayal, it was a confession. And the silence that followed? That was just her admitting she had nothing left to say. I sipped my coffee and looked out the window, the city waking up below me. Somewhere out there, she was waking up too, maybe thinking I'd come crawling back, begging for an explanation. But I wasn't coming back. Not now. Not ever. I had already mourned the loss of our marriage. Now, it was her turn to feel what it's like to be abandoned. Only this time, with nothing left to hold on to. The plan wasn't born out of revenge. It was born out of necessity. When you know you're being lied to, when you see the cracks spreading across your life like veins in old glass, you only get two choices: break or rebuild. I chose the latter. I decided to build something she couldn't touch, even if she smiled sweetly and asked. The switch didn't happen overnight, and that's what made it perfect. It was slow, seamless, legal, and invisible to someone who never thought she needed to look beneath the surface. That's how I won, by being quiet. It started with a conversation we had at the kitchen table a few months before I deployed. I told her I was working on something new with the military, a classified transition program they were testing for personnel returning from long tours. I kept the tone light, like it was just paperwork. A few forms, routine stuff. Nothing important. She barely looked up from her phone when I mentioned it. She just nodded and said, "Just let me know where to sign." I watched her sign everything. 3 times. Blue ink. Right under the clause that transferred full ownership of the house to a living trust one controlled. It was all legal. All notarized. All filed through an attorney she never even knew about. Because I knew if I confronted her directly, she'd just lie again. So I never gave her that chance. I made sure the car she drove was refinanced under my business LLC. The joint accounts? I left enough to keep her calm, but moved everything else. I didn't shut her out, no. I just watched her drift further from me while I quietly tightened the locks behind her. And the beauty of it all? She helped me do it. She was too distracted to notice. Her late-night work calls, her secretive texts, the locked phone that never left her hand. Those weren't just signs of betrayal. They were the distractions I needed to make the switch clean. Every lie she told gave me cover. Every absence gave me opportunity. I became invisible in my own house on purpose, so she'd stop seeing me, stop asking questions. And it worked. I remember one evening, just before I left, we sat on the couch watching some rom-com she picked. I asked her if she wanted to update our emergency contact forms for my deployment. She shrugged and said, "I trust you to handle it." So I did. I removed her from every document: beneficiary, insurance, pension, medical access. In her place, I put my godmother, a woman who raised me when my own mother died young. Someone I knew would protect my legacy, not spend it on dinners and hotel rooms with strangers. That night, she kissed my cheek for the first time in weeks and said, "You're always thinking ahead." I smiled, not because it was sweet, but because it was true, and she had no idea how far ahead I was thinking. The day I left for deployment, I stood in the doorway with my gear strapped to my back. She didn't cry, didn't cling, just waved a lazy hand and said, "See you soon." No, "I love you." No emotion. As I walked to the car, I looked back one last time. She was already closing the door. That moment told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't saying goodbye. She was letting go. And so was I. Once I got to base, I made my final calls. Locked the accounts. Transferred the last assets. Secured the passwords. I even mailed my lawyer one last signed form to seal the trust. While I slept in desert tents and briefed commanders, my old life was dissolving piece by piece. And by the time she sent that message, "Don't come home," She didn't even realize she had already been erased from the foundation of everything we'd built. She still lived in the house, drove the car, used the cards. But nothing was in her name. Nothing tied me to her. It was all a shell. Just like the marriage had become. The best part? She helped me carry out the plan. Every signature, every agreement, every shrug of indifference she gave when I brought up boring paperwork. That was her permission. Her choice. And now, her consequence. People assume revenge is loud. That it looks like screaming matches, courtroom brawls, or burning photographs. But real revenge, the kind that leaves a mark, is quiet. It happens behind the scenes in silence, while the other person's too busy playing games to realize they've already lost. That was the switch. The real story. She thought she was replacing me emotionally, but I was replacing her legally. A few days after her lawyer called me in confusion, I received a text. From her. The first since her forward goodbye. Can we talk? I stared at the screen for a while. I didn't respond right away. I let the hours pass. The next day, she sent another. I think we moved too fast. I didn't mean what I said. Now she wanted to talk. Now that the accounts were empty, the house was locked down, the lawyer had confirmed she had no legal hold on anything, and her new fling probably realized she brought nothing to the table but borrowed comfort. Now she remembered who I was. I finally replied, "You told me not to come home. So I didn't." That was all. No insults. No explanations. No anger. Just truth. Clean, final, and earned. It was almost poetic, really, the timing of it all. I had just finished my morning run, phone still face down on the kitchen counter, coffee brewing in the silence of a condo she'd never seen, in a life she never imagined I had built. I wasn't even thinking about her anymore. The bitterness had started to dull into a strange kind of peace. That was when the phone rang. Unknown number, but I knew the voice immediately. It was her lawyer again, his tone far different than the one he used last time. This time, he sounded shaken. "Mr. Granger, I believe we have a problem," he began. I could hear the tension riding the edges of his throat. The arrogance from our last conversation was gone. It had been replaced by something colder, panic, maybe, or disbelief. I let him keep talking. "I've reviewed the filings you submitted, and, well, frankly, I think there's been some confusion on Mrs. Granger's part regarding the legal ownership of your shared assets." I didn't interrupt. I let the silence do the work. Lawyers hate silence. They talk to fill it. They always reveal too much when you let them sit in it. She's just been informed that the house, the vehicles, the business, none of it is accessible to her. And the accounts, he trailed off. I knew what he saw. I knew what he'd realized. The accounts had been cleaned out months ago. Not in haste, not in pettiness, but with precision, with timing, with receipts. "She's requesting mediation," he said. "She would like to avoid any public legal proceedings. Perhaps a meeting, a compromise." It took everything in me not to laugh. Compromise? After everything? She had removed me from her life with one sentence. And now, because the castle she thought she stood on turned out to be sand, she wanted terms? I finally spoke. Calm. Collected. She made a decision when she told me not to come home. I'm just honoring her request. He sighed. "Look, I'm not here to take sides. But there are ways to handle this more amicably. This doesn't need to escalate." "It already has," I said. "Just not in the way she expected." He paused again. "She didn't know what she was signing. She didn't care what she was signing," I corrected. "And that's the difference." There was another silence. He understood. He may have even respected it. It wasn't personal to me anymore. It was just business. And when it came to business, I always came prepared. "Are you open to a conversation with her?" he asked carefully. "No, but I'll give her a message," I said, grabbing my mug and walking to the window, looking out over a city that moved on, unaware of the small war ending in one of its buildings. He waited. "Tell her the man she erased is gone. The man who replaced him doesn't owe her a word." Then I ended the call. No threats. No screaming. No messy drama. Just the final click of a receiver and the sharp edge of truth. That same afternoon, I received an email. Not from the lawyer, but from her. The subject line was blank. The message was short. "Please. Let's talk." I was angry. I didn't mean it. There it was. The panic. The regret. Not for losing me, but for losing what I gave her access to. She didn't miss me, she missed the life. The safety. The ease. She missed the man who made her feel secure while she secretly entertained someone else's whispers. I didn't even reply. I just archived the email and went back to reviewing a contract for a new investment property. Because while she was unraveling, I was building again. That night, I sat in the quiet of my condo with the lights dimmed and a whiskey glass in my hand. No TV, no music, just stillness. I thought back to every time I'd excused her coldness. Every time I'd rationalized the silence, the late nights, the emotional withdrawal. I thought about how many lies I had swallowed, hoping love would return if I just waited long enough. But the truth was, love had left long ago. And now, I had finally followed it out the door. The final blow came 2 days later when my lawyer called me to confirm she'd attempted to file an emergency claim on the property. She tried to argue that she was entitled to half of everything. He laughed as he told me. She has no standing, he said. You planned this too well. I wasn't planning for a fight, I said. I was planning to survive. And that's what this was, in the end. Not revenge. Not a battle. Just survival. A quiet, surgical separation from a life that no longer fit me. A clean break from a woman who only saw my worth when her comfort was threatened. She tried to burn the bridge, not knowing I had already crossed it and built another one on the other side. I didn't plan to go back. I thought I was done with that house, done with that chapter, done with her. But sometimes closure doesn't come in the form of silence. Sometimes it comes when you stare at the ashes of what once felt like a home and realize you don't feel anything anymore. Not pain, not anger, not even regret. Just calm. So I returned. Not to reconcile, not to talk, but to finish the march I started months ago when I quietly began reclaiming my life from a woman who thought she could erase me with a sentence. I parked across the street from the house we once called ours. The hedges were untrimmed now, the front door frame chipped, paint peeling slightly around the windows. Strange how fast things fall apart when no one cares to maintain them. I used to fix everything around here, light bulbs, locks, leaks. But you can't fix a home that was never truly built on love. You can't patch cracks in the foundation when it was poured on silence, secrets, and selfishness. I sat in the car for a while, just watching. She hadn't noticed me yet. Eventually, I stepped out. The wind carried the faint smell of flowers from the neighbor's yard, and for a second, I remembered the first time we moved in. How excited she was to pick curtains, throw pillows, candles with little wooden wicks that cracked when lit. It all seemed so sincere back then. But maybe it was always about the life, not the man. Maybe I was just the means to an end, a provider she could decorate her dreams around until something more exciting came along. I knocked. Softly. No reason to be loud. No reason to make a scene. When she opened the door and saw me, her face folded into something between shock and hope. She looked thinner, paler, like sleep had been replaced by worry and comfort had given way to chaos. She opened her mouth to speak, but I held up a hand. Don't, I said. I'm not here to talk. She swallowed. Her eyes scanned me, searching for something familiar. Maybe love, maybe weakness. But I didn't bring either with me. I just needed to see it one last time, I said, stepping past her into the house. She didn't stop me. Maybe she knew she couldn't. Or maybe she hoped I was here to change my mind. The living room looked the same, but emptier somehow, even with all the furniture still in place. Like the spirit of it had left the moment I did. I walked slowly, my boots echoing faintly against the hardwood. I touched the kitchen counter where we used to eat breakfast in silence. The hallway where I once stood waiting for her to explain lipstick on her collar. The bedroom door I'd closed behind me one too many nights, wondering if she'd ever come looking. She never did. She stood behind me the whole time, arms crossed, lips trembling slightly. Still not speaking. This used to be home, I said quietly, but it wasn't mine anymore. Not for a long time. I made mistakes, she finally whispered, voice thin and cracked. I got scared. I didn't know how to fix it. You didn't want to fix it, I replied. You wanted out. You just didn't want the consequences. She stepped closer. Is this really how it ends? I turned to face her, and for the first time in years, I felt nothing. Not hate, not heartbreak, not even the urge to forgive. Just a clean, absolute emptiness. It felt good. This ended a long time ago. I'm just here to close the door. Her eyes welled, but the tears didn't fall. Maybe she still thought there was a chance. But I wasn't the man who left for that tour. He died somewhere in between the betrayal and the paperwork. The man standing here was someone new. Someone rebuilt, careful, and clean. I walked past her toward the door. She reached out, fingertips grazing my arm. Please, I looked down at her hand. The same hand that used to trace circles on my chest in the dark. The same hand that signed away everything without reading a single word. Take care of yourself, I said, stepping onto the porch. You'll need to. She didn't follow me outside. She stood there in the doorway, framed like a portrait of regret, watching me walk down the path I once helped pave. I didn't turn back. Not because I wanted to make a statement, but because I truly had no reason to. What we had wasn't mine anymore. The house wasn't hers. The life we lived? Gone. I got into my car and drove. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. That night, I poured a drink in my condo and stood on the balcony, watching the city lights blink like stars fallen to earth. I had survived the war overseas and the one back home. One left scars on my body. The other left none, because I never let her cut that deep. I had left a home that didn't love me and built one that did. One of peace. One of truth. She said, don't come home. And so I didn't. I walked forward, and I never looked back. If this story struck a chord with you, don't forget to subscribe for more powerful narratives like this. Every week, we bring you raw, emotional stories of resilience, betrayal, and unexpected redemption. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that walking away can be the strongest move you ever make. Your support helps us keep telling the stories others are afraid to say out loud.